If you're frustrated or even angry with the school system, this video is for you. The fact that I'm nervous about what I'm going to say today makes me know that I'm going to be brutally honest about what's happening in schools today. I'm probably going to get myself in a lot of trouble for what comes out of my mouth. But I'm here to tell you how it really is. After working in schools for over 20 years as a guidance officer and a teacher, I've got a lot of information. Things that parents of kids that are struggling or neurodiverse really need to hear. Things that are whispered about in schools, but rarely ever make it out to the public or reported on. When school isn't working for your child, the system is really good at making you feel like you're the problem or your child is. But I work with a lot of parents that are frustrated and angry, and they're tired of this. They feel that the school system is broken and their kids are in crisis. Stick around, I'm going to give you 8 reasons why. This is going to be a good one. Number 1, classrooms are overcrowded and good teachers are burning out. Let's start here. If your child's struggling, you need to understand the environment they're walking into every day. Classrooms today are overloaded. Yes, the numbers matter. 25 or even more in a classroom is already demanding. But add to this, there's a big shift in the complexity of the needs of the learners in the class. People are quick to point the finger at teachers, but honestly, it's not about being a teacher classroom management problem. Since COVID, there's been an explosion in an emotional regulation crisis that teachers are being asked to handle multiple kids with ADHD, several kids on the autism spectrum, kids with complex trauma histories, kids with speech language difficulties or learning disabilities, and those that are not formally diagnosed but are really struggling. This is an impossible task for a teacher, even with teacher aid help. Now, add to that the reality that there's a shortage of teachers in many areas, a real shortage. Some schools just cannot find teachers to fill the vacancies. Not just specialists, not experienced teachers, sometimes just someone who is qualified to teach the subject. I've heard of situations, not schools that I've directly worked in, but schools where on the day they've been so stretched they haven't even had teachers to supervise the class. So they've had to combine multiple classes together, sometimes almost 100 students, putting them together with 1 or 2 supervising teachers. Obviously the goal in that situation isn't teaching and learning. The goal is simply safety and keeping control. And there's another part that parents don't see. The stronger or more experienced the teacher is, the more work they're given. If a teacher's calm or skilled with behaviour and good with complex students, what often happens? They're given the most challenging classes because they can handle it. They're asked to mentor other teachers, lead teams and committees, run programs, write policies, cover gaps when someone's away. The better they perform, the more responsibilities they're given. And over time, this becomes completely overwhelming. Many experienced teachers are exhausted and burnt out. When teachers strike, it's often framed as a pay issue, but often it's about the workload and sustainability. I constantly hear teachers talk about there simply is not enough hours in the day to get done what they need to. When adults are stretched thin, flexibility shrinks. Individualized support becomes harder. Patience shortens, and time disappears. And neurodivergent students who need flexibility, clarity, and relational safety are usually the first ones to feel that strain. Number 2, inclusion depends on who's in charge. The principal lottery. Parents of neurodivergent kids learn this fast. The exact same child can be supported in one school, but completely unravel in another. Nothing about your child changed. Leadership did. Some principals that I've worked with deeply understand neurodiversity and flexibility. Others prioritise order, compliance, and keeping things running smoothly. That's why families get forced to move schools. They feel just desperate to find the right one. When parents say, "This place gets my child," that's not luck. That's school leadership. 3, neurodivergent kids don't get help until they're in a crisis. This is one of the most painful experiences parents have. Support usually doesn't start when a child is struggling. It starts when things completely fall apart. a meltdown, school refusal, suspension, or an anxiety attack. Until then, parents often hear, let's monitor it. They're coping, it's developmentally normal. But we know that neurodivergent kids don't show early distress in ways that schools are trained to notice. They mask, they comply, they push through until they can't. It is beyond frustrating that parents need to wait for their child to have a crisis or completely explode until specialist intensive support actually kicks in. Number 4, small adjustments feel bigger than they should. Parents often ask for reasonable adjustments, movement breaks, sensory support, flexible deadlines, a safe, supported regulation space. These are not extreme requests. But schools are structured around standardisation, one way of doing things. When one child needs something different, it can feel complicated. Like if they change things for one child, they'll have to change it for them all. Parents often leave meetings feeling like they've asked for too much, but that really isn't the case. They're just asking for a structured environment to accommodate a different nervous system. That's not unreasonable, but it does require flexibility. And that flexibility is harder in a system that wants every child to look the same. Number 5, schools are judged on whole school data, not individual successes. Here's something that parents often don't understand. Schools are often mostly focused on whole school data, attendance rates, test scores, behaviour statistics. These are the things that actually impact their reputation and performance. These are things that are about the whole school, not the individual. So if most of the school are coping, the school is seen as successful, even if your child isn't. And when your child becomes the one that doesn't fit, the one that impacts the data, or the behaviour stats, or the smooth running of a class, that can become an issue for the school. You might start to hear conversations like, this might not be the best environment for your child. On the surface, it sounds supportive, but often it's more about that the school is not prepared to adjust around one child. And sometimes, instead of fighting to make it work and support the child, schools are sometimes just willing to let them go. Parents who've changed schools would sometimes know that feeling of being encouraged or even pushed out the door. That's hard to accept, but it definitely does happen. Number 6, the kids who sit still get rewarded. Schools talk about celebrating differences, but the day-to-day reality is that kids who are able to sit still and follow instructions quickly tend to have an easier time at school. If you're quiet, organised, and don't interrupt the flow of the class, you get corrected less. That's just how classes run. Now think about many neurodivergent kids. They move more, they ask more questions, they react more strongly. They don't always regulate quietly. So they hear stop, sit, wait, calm down a lot more often. Not because they're bad, but because they stand out. Over time, that constant correction starts to have a big impact. They stop thinking that school is hard, and they start thinking that I'm the problem. And those thoughts can stick around well after school's finished. You know your child better than any system ever will. Teachers change every year, support staff rotate, leadership moves on. Parents feel this more than anyone. You might spend months working with one teacher. You share strategies, you explain the triggers, you build understanding. You finally feel that that person really gets your child. And then the year ends. That teacher moves on, and you're stuck at the beginning again. Sometimes the information transfers well, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's written in a file somewhere and the teacher hasn't read it. Sometimes it's technically documented, but it isn't understood by the new person. Meanwhile, you're still living with your child every day. You see what happens before school. You see what happens after the day ends. You see the patterns across years. School often sees one version of your child in one classroom for 1 year. You see the whole picture. So when you're told, they seem fine, or you're not being listened to and it doesn't match what you're seeing. That can be really frustrating as a parent. You're not overreacting, you're just seeing the long-term view, and that really does matter. Number 8, schools measure the wrong things for neurodivergent kids. Here's the hard truth. Schools measure attendance, grades, test results, but they rarely measure emotional regulation, energy management, self-advocacy, safety, or return from overwhelm. So neurodivergent kids are pushed to meet those academic benchmarks until sometimes they burn out and parents are left to hold everything together outside school hours. Well, that's it for that one. Honestly, I could keep going, so I'll probably make another video. Make sure you're following on Facebook and subscribed on YouTube. Even though I believe that the system sometimes is an absolute mess, I really need to say that I haven't given up on it. There are some amazing teachers that I've worked with, and some schools doing some really extraordinary things. The fact is, the world isn't perfect. Each day I choose to focus on the things that are working and how I can play a role in helping young people access an imperfect system. I believe that a quality education in this school system is worth fighting for. It's what every child truly deserves. And if you need more help getting this system working for your child, check out the links below in the description. You don't have to walk this path alone.